Welcome to the Airgun World Podcast, brought to you by Catchup, the Southwest's premier airgun centre and ranges. I'm Matt Manning. With me this week, I've got Rich Saunders, who is an Airgun World contributor, and you'll also probably recognise him from the Airgun Show. And our guest is Tom Aitchison, who works at Hull Cartridge, which is the official UK importer for Weihrauch airguns. So welcome, gents. Let's kick off with the usual catch-up in which Rich usually just makes us jealous with the sort of shooting that he's got access to. A quick look at what we've been doing shooting-wise over the past week or two. I will kick off because I've actually acquired a new permission this time. Got some really good rabbit shooting fairly close to home, which is great. An unusual venue. It's a wedding venue. So in terms of doing any filming or photography for articles there, we have to be very, very discreet about showing anything that will reveal the location. But the big problem that the rabbits are causing there are lots of lawns, lots of short grass, and obviously even shorter and supposedly smoother walkways between these lawns. But the rabbits are scraping and burrowing in those walkways. And you can imagine wedding guests that have had a few drinks. Often wedding celebrations go on into the night. It's dark. And the last thing this venue wants is somebody turning over an ankle during a wedding do. So that's the reason for controlling these rabbits. And it's really nice shooting in that the area where most of the rabbits seem to be present. Again, it's very short grass, and it's the kind of place where I can just lie down on my belly towards the end of the day, just as dusk's setting in, and snipe the rabbits from a bipod as they emerge from the bank. So, yeah, really nice bit of shooting. Nice to be back on the rabbits again. And for me, other than that, it's just been the usual lots and lots of grey squirrel control. So that's what I've been up to. Rich, what have you been doing shooting-wise?
Well, no new permissions this week, Matt. You'll be pleased to know.
That's a relief.
I've been the squirrels have taken a little bit of a back seat the last few weeks, and I've mainly been shooting rabbits, an awful lot of rabbits, filling up my freezer, the freezer at the Falconry Centre as well. Also been doing some pest control training with a bunch of guys, teaching them how to use an air gun properly and safely, and a little bit of corvid shooting on the fruit farm. Massive problem with corvids getting into the onto the fruit crops at the moment. That's largely what I've been doing.
So a real mix, quite a mix there. Tom, Obviously you work in the shooting industry, so you've obviously been doing something shooting connected in the past week or so. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so last Saturday it was Ian Curley's Open Day. Finally, we're now into spring. The weather's turned a bit better this week. And so we'd like to go to some of these dealers all around the country, shooting ranges, and, show off the wear. So not only is it on the air rifle front with Weihrauch, we'll have like a little range set up there, which is always so popular. People are always liking to have a go on the 100, the 110. We take a couple of break barrels with us underlevers to give people, a good idea of the range. And they always love it because some people have never shot air rifles before. So it's always a good way to get people introduced to it all. Or you always get the odd one or two who always thought about wanting to get a Weihrauch but never had the chance to have a proper go at them. So we like to do these little shows because really you spend a lot of money on these things. You want to make sure you're buying the right decision, and 9 times out of 10 they're always going for it.
Yeah, and I think also getting to try before you buy, what a luxury. I think a lot of people do buy guns blind because they fancy a certain product, but nothing beats actually getting your hands on a gun and seeing how it actually works for you before you commit to buying it. Let's stick with that line and stick with the Weihrauch side of things. As I said at the start, Hull Cartridge, official UK importer / distributor. How did that arrangement come to be, and how long's that been in place?
It's been going on for nearly 50 years now, 47 years. Started off in 1977, and like a lot of things what really happened, it was really by chance. So we have one of our first ever sales reps, Hull Clark, who later on became a director. He was there visiting a gun dealer and just happened to see there a transaction going place for buying an air rifle, and was just amazed just how easy it was. There was no licensing involved. You didn't have to show ID, things like that. It was just a case of, I'd like that air rifle, please, sir. Here you go. There you are. And he thought to himself, well, what a great addition to a business is by bringing in an air rifle as something else to, help improve sales, help build up the brand and everything else. So they did the research and looked to see what would be one of the best things to bring in the market. And they came across this German company called Weihrauch. And kind of the rest was history really from there on. Got in contact with them, started bringing them in. It started off with a HW35, which I'm sure you two know a lot about. And for a lot of people who I speak to at these shows, this is always their very first air rifle. It's what, got them into it all. Or for some people, because Weihrauch's always been a premium product, it's the air rifle they always wanted to own. It's the one they was jealous of because people always wanted to get hold of themselves. So yeah, it's gone on from there. I mean, back 50 years ago, there was only really two major brands. It was BSA and Webley. So they had to find something good to break into that market. And I think most people say these days that Weihrauch bring out some of the best air rifles in the business, really.
Certainly, I think the quality of the product is the thing that sticks in mind, I think, with a lot of people regarding Weihrauch. And something I was going to touch on is the tremendous loyalty that the brand has established over those decades. I mean, the loyalty that people have to the brand. I myself, I've got an HW35 and an HW100, and they're guns that I couldn't imagine parting with. What do you put that brand loyalty down to?
I think it's just the reputation, what they've got. They've been going on for so many years now, and people just know what to expect. There's really no major changes or anything like that. They just make these really well-built rifles, what are reliable, and one of the important things are to traditional. They like the guns to look like guns. You always get a nice bit of wood on the stock. They look after, look nice. They're people's pride and play sometimes. I speak to people all the time who have these guns on a gun rack on display in their room because they're just so proud of it. I mean, yeah, they do have so much of tools and people go out in the fields and things like that, but they don't care what they look after. You speak to them and say they'll go out shooting for a couple of hours and then spend 3 hours afterwards cleaning it up, making sure that it lasts for them. And then we get these guns, what have been, what could be 20, 30 years old, and they're still working good. They just need a little tinkering, a bit of service here, and people know when they buy one, it's building to last, and it's going to last them forever and a day. They can pass it on to generation. And that's what people like. And it's just got this name behind it all. Some people refer to it as being like the Rolls Royce of air rifles. And I'm inclined to believe that because the bits are also all most of the bits are made in house. I mean, they're making their own barrels still there. I've been to the factory. You see three guys whose job it is just to look down every single barrel to look out for any imperfections. It's all done by this whole man-made thing. I mean, yeah, they haven't got into the 21st century and have some machines there to help speed things up again. But at the end of the day, it's all put together by hand. It's all checked off by a person there doing it. It's all boxed together. You just know it's just been a lot of care has gone into every single rifle.
Mm-hmm. I think, as you say, Tom, that longevity breeds a sense of you're not going to make a mistake if you go for a Weihrauch. And people are just used to the name having been around since forever. And I know you guys just celebrated, was it 125 years or Weihrauch celebrated 125 years?
Yeah. So this year is their 125th anniversary. You think about how many businesses, they're still a family-run business, the same as Hull Cartridge. This is another reason why we get on so well and why we've been important them for so long, is that we've both got the same kind of family ethos, that it's all kept from generation to generation. And now you've got a Felix coming in, whose hands his son. You don't often hear many companies going in that long. I mean, they normally say something like the fourth generation has to both of. We're both going to suppress that. And yeah, so for this 125th anniversary, they wanted to, celebrate such a massive achievement, which after we unveiled at the British Shooting Show, they've now done themselves 3 rifles with this beautiful black and red stock to represent the colour, the logo of the brand.
I was going to say, I saw those, it's a busy show for me, and I saw those 125-year editions from afar, and I kept walking past them and wanted to go over there and give them a little stroke and a little bit of love, but I never quite managed it. Are they selling well? Were they limited editions or? Yeah,
so they are all limited editions, and it's a worldwide limited release. So what we're getting out there, that's going to be it. What we're getting in, and as soon as we got them out on their dealers on the day of the show, we was all there with either pads and pens out or phones out, taking down orders from, because people knew they were going to sell. Because going back to this dedicated fan base, people don't want to miss out on getting one of these limited edition guns because there's going to be no more after this. This is it. So when you're looking at, say, the HW100, it's the ultimate PCP. It's tried and tested. It's been going on for 21 years now. There's nothing more you can really say about it. Everybody knows just how reliable it is. Even when it comes down to the cocking system, just how accurate it is, the easy loading, everything about it. So it was a no-brainer that was going to be involved into there. And so there's only going to be 300 of those worldwide, and we're getting 150 of them. So we're getting half of this. So if you're getting one of those, you've got yourself a real collector's item there.
Given the deep relationship that you've got with Weihrauch, do you have any actual kind of input to the guns that they're working, that they're developing?
Yes, we do. So, like I said, argument's sake, over the past 3 years, we want to have like a special edition to kind of give something different, because people are always asking, they want something new here, they think they're going to look good like this. So we've kind of adopted like kind of a grey laminate policy we seem to have had. So we had the 98 about 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago we had the 35 with the nickel barrel, and the 100 with the grey laminate stock as well. So, because we're coming up with these ideas, we just say to Weihrauch, look, this is what customers want. They want something different, but still looks like a Weihrauch. Because, like I say, it's going back to all traditional value as well. So, we're bringing up these ideas and just say, this is what our customers want. Weihrauch say, well, if that's what your customers want, that's something we're going to give to them then. So, we kind of come up with these ideas to say to them, can you please do this for us? And they'll happily come round and come back with us. So, this is why we're always listening to people at these shows.
I didn't realise, Tom, that you guys were the genesis behind those variants of the model. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, especially for last year, because it was the 20th anniversary of the 100, we wanted to do something to celebrate that. So that's why we went for the nickel pelleted on the barrels, why we went for to come with the gun slip as well. Just so you got this nice presentation piece, the signed signature of Hans Weihrauch on every single one. Again, going back to these Weihrauch enthusiasts. People all the time want to meet Hans. They love it when it comes to a show and, try and see, is he here? Is he there? They want to try and, meet the man who's behind, what is really their ultimate hobby, what a lot of people base their lives on, because when they go out there shooting, and that 100 or that 97, that's pride of place in their household.
I can remember as a youngster absolutely hankering after the HW77. In fact, just going back quickly to those anniversary guns, for those that haven't seen them, we had them on a recent cover of Airgun World magazine. If you can see them past the glare from my light, so they are amazing looking editions. Moving on from that, and the fact we get the odd special edition, and if there's one ethos that I think applies to Weihrauch airguns, it's that classic: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, there are lines in the lineup that have been around for decades. Now, obviously, they've been kept current with tweaks to keep them bang up to date, and in terms of current design and manufacturing processes. But generally, the lines from Weihrauch are based around a handful of core products. Now, do you think we're going to see any radical changes or any new models in the foreseeable future, or do you think it's more likely to be that continuation of that rolling development?
You've kind of hit the nail on the head. Like the product themselves has just been the same throughout, with like the small little tweaks and adjustments here. They've got things down to a T. Everyone always asks what's coming out to the show, and sometimes PCP got more room to, kind of adjust things, make things better. However, again, go back to like things traditional, and really with the 100, what more else can you do to it? Same thing with the 110, that's been going on for nearly 10 years now. They've kind of hit like a certain point where the products are like a nice lightweight, more rugged, gun out there you can go for ratting. If you look at the carbine version, it's just so lightweight, and you've got that shot count there with it. However, when it comes to spring guns, looking at what more else can they do? I mean, you've got the underlevers there with the 97s and the 77s. The 77's been going on for years. That was like one of the second air rifles was bringing in. It's still just so, robust. It's still so strong. I mean, it's so accurate. It does everything what you need to do. And then with terms of the break barrels, obviously in the olden days, you had the 80s, which was like a big, powerful rifle. But then when things changed with limits, we got the 95 in. I mean, the 95 is one of our top sellers. So I kind of look at how much can you go further? What sort of areas can you go for? I mean, the only thing I could think of is something like a multi-shot Springer. However, that's just, that's just something what I think could be the next logical step. However, the Weihrauch, though, the German, okay, they like to keep the cards very, very close to the chest. They've always got R&D on the advance. They've always got, something in the pipeline. They've always got, some little idea going there. Like I say, I've been to the factory. I've been to like the office of where they do the guy sat there who's come with their ideas and drawing up sketches, coming up with these sort of things. They have always got something to go there, but they don't want to unveil it until they know it's right, until it's, ready. Like they were a bit late on the PCP market because they wanted to get it right. So yeah, they were like, 5-10 years behind everyone else. But so they will get that. So people might think, oh, well, so-and-so's doing this. Why have they not done it? I was thinking because they may be developing it, but they'll make sure that when it comes out, it's ready and it's hit the ground running.
So Tom, Weihrauch is well known for having such a huge catalogue of rifles that it's been making for decades. And we talked about the HW35 and the HW80. I've got both of those that I had when I was a kid, and yet I could still go into a shop and buy new versions of it now. And some of those have been made for decades and decades. The reason why Weihrauch does that, is that because it wants to create this sense of longevity and heritage? Or, do you just keep making those because people buy them?
I think it's down to the longevity. And like I said, these guns are robust. Why change certain bits on it when it's just where you know that it's already working the way it is? Yeah, sometimes do like a little, thing with the 77, they changed from a ball bearing push button system to a ball bearing system to a push button system. That in the end made it last longer because the ball bearings can ping out, you lose them, everything else. So what they're doing is these little changes they're doing. They aren't doing just think, oh, let's make a new Mark III or whatever else. They're doing it because we have this system here, but this system's better, so let's get this involved instead. And that's what they do. Just look to how can they improve these rifles to make sure they last longer. I mean, it's one of the whole thing about viruses. I'm still amazed how many we sell because they're built to last. It's not like someone said, "Oh, I've had a 95 for 5 years now. I've had my wear out of it. It's now time to get a new one." No, it's not. I've had a 95 for 15 years now. Needs a service now, so I can get another 15 years out of it.
The fact that Weihrauch has got lines that have lasted and remained relevant for so long, I find that really reassuring. And like you said about them being a bit late to the PCP party with the HW100, that was because they were sitting back and getting it right in the first place. And then once they nailed it with that product, they only had to tweak it to keep it towards the absolute top of the game. And sometimes I do feel like you mentioned about bringing out specials because there's a show coming up. And I sometimes feel that there's almost too much pressure on gun makers to sort of bow down to that and come out with new products or new twists on products just for the sake of giving people something new, when actually what they've already got, if you get it right in the first place, should be perfectly good enough. And that's certainly the case with Weihrauch in my experience. It's just got an amazing blend of what feels like a rock solid bomb-proof gun that also, thanks to those famous triggers in no small part, feels like it's got a heck of a degree of finesse and refinement too. It just seems to strike the balance ever so well.
I think the trigger is and also one of the big selling points for Weihrauch as well, because for every Springer, it has the same trigger mechanism. So if you all want to change and think to yourself, I'm bored of firing break barrels now, I want to get an underlever, you can you're going to be familiar with that trigger. You know how that trigger works. You can adjust it to how you want it, how you want the two-stage to go, where you want the pull to go, and everything else. So straight away, you'll get it, fire it out of the box, tweak it a little bit, and you go, right, I know how to shoot this. I know exactly how I want this set. Because each gun's it's just related in its own way, if that makes sense.
It is quite amazing that a trigger unit that set the standard however many decades ago is still pretty much the trigger against which others are measured all this time on. It's incredible.
It really is. And I don't know if you've ever taken one apart, have a look inside, but there's that much what goes into it and so many little fiddly parts. I mean, I wouldn't want to take one apart and put that together again. It's a good job we've got a couple of good gunsmiths with us. Because it's like, again, this whole precise German engineering where everything's its own little places, like these like little springs here, little rollers. It's just, everything's just fitted. You kind of look at it and think, goodness me, how does this work? How is this, who's thought of this, all these like things to come together, which can then fit multiple different guns? Again, it kind of comes down to this whole thing. Like even the body of it is built a certain way so it fits in the rifle for the safety and everything. It's just, again, it's these little things what they think of and what makes it last forever, because there's only little springs in here, little thin, but yet they're built to last.
You're probably a little bit insulated from general market trends with regards to Springers, but are Springer sales holding up against PCP sales? Are you seeing more PCPs going out the door now, or?
No, I still see a lot of Springers go out. I mean, our best seller is the 99 because it's our entry-level break barrel rifle, it's a good way of getting people introduced to the brand. So the 99 is still going very, very strong. Like I said before, the 95 is still going very, very strong as well. The 100 sales are always going to be, they're always up there. And they're so strong, our 100 sales and our 110 sales and everything else. And again, because we haven't got, we've got different stock variations, but really it's just, three if you now include the bullpup. We've only got like kind of three core PCP rifles there. And they all complement each other very, very well. So, but yeah, Springers though, I think as well that for the break barrels, I think Weihrauch just kind of dominate the market really when you come to that sort of levels. I mean, as I say, we still sell a lot. I mean, we still sell a lot of 35s, and that's been were the original ones were brought in. The 97s, we're kind of getting like overlapping now what you want to use for those because they're good. A 97 is a hybrid gun. People want to use it for out in the field, but then you can also use it for your target shooting as well. It's a good rifle you use both. And that's another reason why they adopted that as being one of the special editions as well. That you've got this rifle here you can use for both things. Granted, you can have a very, very nice black and red stock on it, so you only get it too damaged too much, so people will be very, very careful out in the field. But that rifle is so good for all-round things like that. And then with the 50, which most people are aware is that the 50 was the original Weihrauch. Most people think it's the 35 because that was the first thing what Hull Cartridge brought in. But the 50 is the OG rifle. Now, for people who might not know, we call the 50 the 99 over here, just because of obviously with the difference in power and things like that. But that is the original one. Yeah, okay. And to say that the 50/99 is still going strong, still the biggest sales to this day after they've been making them for 50 odd years, just testament to what such a brilliant product it is, and people still want it.
It's an amazing legacy for a brand. That longevity is incredible. But I suppose we should probably move on to the section of the podcast where we tackle questions that we get from our readers, viewers, listeners, however people want to tune in. First question I've got is from Paul Thomas. And I assume, Rich, that this is probably referring to what we're getting up to on the airgun show. It says, you seem to be able to get very close to your quarry. What is your top Fieldcraft tip? So, Rich, do you want to go first? A top tip or two for Fieldcraft?
If there's one tip, it would be to keep still. Not only in terms of ambushing your quarry, and I'm talking mainly rabbits here, but also pigeons, corvids, certainly squirrels, shooting squirrels from a hide, keeping still. But also when you're, if I'm out stalking after rabbits or anything else, then I spend probably if I have to stalk, let's say 50 meters to get within range of something, I probably spend more time standing still in that 50 meters than I do actually moving in those 50 meters. And it's amazing how often, especially with rabbits, you can approach, obviously if there's available cover, that's great, but sometimes there just isn't. And a number of times I've just walked directly up to rabbits, very, very slowly, trying to keep my profile the same, stopping every now and then whenever there's any kind of indication that the rabbits are getting a bit jumpy. And yeah, I would say, obviously, all the basics of staying downwind and all that kind of stuff, but don't underestimate the value of keeping still and doing nothing.
Keeping still was going to be my one, because when you're not moving, if one thing catches the eye, it's movement. So if you're still, that's not happening. But also, you're not making noise. Your clothes aren't rustling. Your feet aren't crunching or stepping on twigs or even squeaking in damp grass. So you take out movement, and all of a sudden, stealth just goes up massively. And funny enough, talking at the start about the rabbit shooting that I've been doing and being able to shoot them, ambush them, and shoot prone and shoot them from a bipod. If you're going to keep still, and if you've got the patience and you can put up with being a bit uncomfortable, certainly for rabbit shooting, obviously it doesn't work for all quarry, but if you can get down on your belly, so first of all, you've taken out the movement, you've also got yourself right down off of the skyline, you're practically invisible. Sometimes I don't even wear a head net when I'm doing that kind of shooting. And to top it off, you've taken your centre of gravity down to the ground and you're using a bipod. So stealth's gone through the roof and you've given accuracy a massive boost too. So yeah, for me, it is also keep still. And if it's quarry that permits you and a shooting situation that permits you to be keeping still on your belly, then even better. Tom, do you do any live quarry shooting?
Yeah, I mean, where I am, there's actually a couple of quarries around here and everything else. I was going to kind of, that's by what you said about silence as well. I think silence needs to be the key. And I think it's one of the reasons why our rifles are very, very popular with the silencers on there. I think you have to make sure you've got a good silencer on there because the slightest bit of twanging can always put off a whole, rasp of animals. You could have half a dozen rabbits at one end. And if your rifle's making too much noise, you might get the first one, but the rest of them are going to be scarpering afterwards and everything else. So I think it's just having that stealth, that quietness going about yourself is very, very important.
I suspect what's probably driving Paul's question is, I don't know if he's having difficulty stalking rabbits. The general kind of perception is that we go off in the field somewhere and we spot a rabbit 100 meters away and we sneak into within 30 meters of them. Sometimes that happens, but I would say probably 18 of every 20 rabbits that I shoot from ambushing them, simply because, rabbits have had thousands of years of evolving to avoid things and people eating them. They've got a real kind of advantage over us. No matter how much we dress up in, silly T-shirts and funny hats and everything, they'll just, they've got the advantage. And, the only way that we can overcome that advantage is technology and also by being a little smarter. And the smarter part is ambushing tactics. And, I'm never too concerned. If I spot, and when you shoot on a permission for a while, you get to know where the rabbits are on your permission. And I'm never that concerned if they see me from a distance and they kind of, hop into the hedgerow, reasonably slowly, because I know that I can get into 20, 30, 25, 30 meters away, get nice and comfy, and they'll probably come out again. I'd rather do that than try my best to sneak up and spook them from 40 or 50 meters and then disappear like smoke on a windy day, and they'll never come back up again. So I don't underestimate. Paul, if you're struggling to get within range stalking rabbits, then try giving ambushing a go.
And I think that's also another point, actually, is to sometimes resist the temptation to try stalking, because again, shooting these rabbits this week, when I arrived, I didn't attempt to stalk the ones that were already out. I almost walked them in like I would walk pigeons off of a field before I set up for decoying. So I wasn't creeping around and looking like a predator. In fact, I probably looked more like a dog walker. I didn't want to stomp around and really disturb them, but I just walked up there without trying to creep about. Probably didn't look like my intentions were bad, like it would have if I'd been creeping around. So they all just disappeared into the bank. I settled down, and sometimes it can take a little while for them to start coming back out, but once they do start coming back out, it tends to be quite steady sport if you're in the right place. I think we're pretty much agreed that keeping still and keeping quiet, that's the key to it. And in fact, it's one of the key reasons why most of the hunting I do it on my own, because I find it so difficult to keep quiet when I'm out with mates. I can't stop chattering. So the next question that I have is from Nigel Betts, and it sounds like he has been or is planning to do some backyard plinking. And he's asking, what's the best pellet catcher to use in the backyard, both in terms of safety and also to keep noise to a minimum? Tom, you got any views on pellet catchers, backstops, that kind of thing, and how to do it discreetly?
Pellet catchers, no, but I think the thing you've got to stress out most is how safe and secure your back garden is. If a single pellet ricochets out and goes into your neighbour's garden, you're then liable. You can be then arrested for that under the firearms offences. So make sure you got to do is having a pellet catcher is great, but it's what you've got around there as well. You got to make sure that is safe and secure. That you've got high risen fences up there. You can get some hail bales or something like that. Get some of them dotted about the place. You've got to make sure that your garden is safe and secure for anything. I mean, I've heard horror stories before, unfortunately, and that's the thing. So you just got to make sure, as long as you are looking after yourself and you've got a good size back garden, you've got nice, safe, secure setup. That's great, because you can have the best pellet catcher in the world. However, it doesn't take one rogue shot to go somewhere and to put you right in the middle of it all. So just safety, security is the first thing you need to be looking at, and build your pellet catcher around that is what I personally think.
Yeah, funny enough, I ran into this same issue just recently. I don't do an awful lot of shooting in the garden. I never have. done much in the way of plinking because I've lucky enough to have a range very near to me. But I did have to do some plinking the other day to test something or other, and I was stuck for something to use as a backstop in the garden. And my wife had just recently been out and bought some of those really big, like 100-litre bricks of compost that's really tightly packed together and everything. And she bought about 5 or 6 of these things. I thought they look ideal. So I kind of stacked those up and made a little kind of cove with those, and the targets pin on them, lovely and everything. And yeah, really, really good backstops, apart from the fact that everything that's supposed to be inside the bag after a while comes out of the bag. And she was monumentally fed up with me after a few hundred shots. But, I said, look, I'm doing some gardening and putting some compost down. I've heard other people using sand, bags of sand. Again, obviously you need to have somewhere to contain the spillage of the sand because it will come out eventually. And I know a lot of people use paving slabs and have those sort of angled down, which are very effective, but I imagine they make a little bit of noise. And that's the other factor that you need to consider when you're plinking in the garden. It's not just because you can make air rifles like you were saying, Tom, air rifles, especially PCPs, can be almost silent in the garden. But if they're hitting something metallic or any hard surface, they'll make a noise. So that's something to factor in as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of the best targets that you can buy are made from metal, which is noisy. And I do quite a lot of backyard plinking and backyard zero checking. And for me, because our garden is mostly panel fencing, which will not stop an airgun pellet, the slab that you referred to, I start out with a large concrete slab, which is like that gives me my sort of large portable backstop. But that's insurance. I'm not expecting pellets to hit that, but at least it's a big stopper and it's there. And then I tend to use mostly these days, if I'm shooting paper or card targets, the pellet trap from the Airgun Target Company. I've got the 5mm. It's FAC appropriate. Not that I'm using FAC in the backyard, but it's 5mm steel, really strong. It's very super dependable pellet trap. But again, it's metal, so it potentially can make quite a lot of noise. So if I need to be really discreet, I stuff rags in it. Just stuff a few rags into the box section of that pellet trap, so that they're not smacking into the steel at the back, and that is pretty quiet. Because years ago, I would tape together phone directories, if anybody can remember them. So yeah, just a couple of phone books or a couple yellow pages, just to get that thickness that is going to stop pellets. Obviously, I've still got the slab behind it. And I just used to use drawing pins, pin targets to them. And that was a quiet backstop. But yeah, I don't remember the last time I saw a phone directory. I think the sandbag's another good one. But yeah, so generally, the key thing is, as Tom said, you have got to utterly ensure that no pellets are going to leave the boundary of your garden. That's the first thing to consider.
So Matt, I've got a good question here from Edward Steele, who I don't know whether he's thinking about making an investment in an air rifle at the moment. But he's asking, what do we think is the most important feature to consider when buying a new air rifle? And let's split that into buying a new PCP and buying a new Springer. So, I don't know, Tom, do you want to kind of walk us through what you would encourage people to think about both PCP and Springer?
When someone asks me and says, I want to buy an air rifle, what should I get? You always have to kind of ask them a few questions, say, what's better suited for them? Obviously, budget's been your key thing, really, is what you're looking to spend on there. But it's also what you're looking to use it for. So somebody said to me, I'm using to do a bit of pest control and also target shooting. You want to go something what's, an all-rounder gun, really. So that's why I'd normally say something like a 97 or a 95, something like that. It depends on if they're either the underlever or the break barrel option. It comes down to, are the kids going to be using it as well? So if that's the case, they want something a bit more lightweight as well. Are other people, who are quite as strong as you, you got to something which can be adjusted, do the adjustable butt pad on it, adjustable cheek piece. So it's all things like that, really, what I kind of have to look out for. Also, it comes down to really is, whereabouts do you live as well, really? If you're thinking in the back garden and everything else, you'd have a very big area, like we were just talking about. Maybe something like a 30S kit, junior rifle, something like that. If you just want to be shooting tin cans off off a shelf or something like that, something little like that. It's just comes down to you've got to really get to the nitty gritty, really, some people, things like that. Because, like I said, this is what's good about having ranges, because you get to have a go at yourself and, you put a big investment in here. So when you're first starting off, it's just a case of, just breaking out the core elements, really, what you're looking for and work from there, which is what's good for Weihrauch, because you've got such a big range. But then I also say that if you're looking to buy one, you have to have a go at it, especially if it's your first one as well.
How about you, Matt? I mean, we're spoilt with most of the rifles that come across our tables. We don't have to buy; we just get to play with them for a little while and then give them back. But if you had to plonk some hard cash down, what would you be looking for?
First piece of advice to anybody is to stop and think what you're going to be using it for. So that sort of ties in with Tom's who's going to be using it as well. So whether it's for a youngster, smaller person, an adult, what have you. So who's going to be using it and what are you going to be using it for? So you're getting an appropriate model. If you're going to be using it in the confines of farm buildings, do you want a really long rifle? No, probably not. If you want a relatively affordable airgun for occasional use and you don't want the hassle of charging kit, then probably a PCP isn't for you. So, what are you going to be using it for? And then how does it actually feel to you? How does it fit you? Because some guns I pick up, they feel like they've been designed to fit me and me only. It's just, obviously it's pure luck. You pick one up, it's perfect. You pick up another gun, and I assume that wherever that stock was designed, they had someone with a very different frame to me, and it feels like a real compromise. So, and I think this is a mistake that I see people making occasionally, is that they fall in love with a gun before they've tried it. And I often see about people moaning about guns that they've pre-ordered. I often see it on social media. I pre-ordered this gun, waited ages for it, and then it turned up and I didn't like this about it and I didn't like that about it. And it's like, well, you pre-ordered that gun before you'd even picked it up. And it kind of harks back to what Tom was saying about the open day that he was at recently. What a luxury, because yes, Rich and I are spoiled because we get to try most guns through our jobs, and we get that privilege of being able to pick them up and try them before we commit to choosing anything. But I think if you're going to spend serious money, and I know not everybody has gun shops on their doorstep or what have you, but I think it is so worthwhile to get your hands on this dream gun just to convince yourself and to be assured that not only is it this lovely thing that you first believed it was, but it works for you and it fits your frame, because that can make such a difference to the experience of owning and shooting an airgun. Anything to add, Rich?
Yeah, I think if I was talking to someone who's looking to buy a Springer, I would say, it's not the best advice in the world, but spend as much as you can, because I think that there's quite a gulf in terms of quality between the very good Springers, the more expensive Springers, and the very cheap ones. And if you're buying a gun for the first time, there are some good cheap Springers out there, but the chances are you might be disappointed because there's more risk there. The further up the fiscal scale you go, the more you tend to remove that risk out of getting a good Springer. And obviously they all begin with a W, don't they, Tom?
Certainly do.
But for PCPs, I mean, for sure, the high end PCPs, generally speaking, they're all very, very good. You do get some very, very passable, cheaper PCPs, which is a different kind of setup to the Springer market, I'd say. And I think when I say, someone says to me, I want to buy a PCP, and especially if it's their only gun, reliability is obviously important for everyone. No one wants to buy a PCP that's going to spring a leak within 5 minutes. But if you have only one gun, you don't have the luxury of a backup or a backup or a backup gun. Then I always say, look, pick a model that's been out for a while. Pick a model that's been around for a number of years, because airgun companies, it's a kind of a rolling development thing. And if a new gun comes out, there takes a while often for some of the issues to get engineered out. So if you want an absolutely reliable gun, get something like an HW100 that's been made for 21 years, because the chances are, any kind of, O-ring that wasn't quite up to snuff to start with will have been replaced. So that's why I always say, if the PCP and reliability is key for you, get a model that's been around for some time. So the final question I had, Matt, was a question from Lee Pierce, who I suspect has just come into a few quid, because he's asking, if you have £50 to spend, what shooting accessory would you buy? 50 quid. So go on, Matt, I'll throw that one at you first. I know we don't have to buy our stuff, but
If I found myself in the terrible position of having to spend £50, I would buy a decent pair of gloves, I think. I like to wear gloves when I'm shooting. I like gloves that give me decent grip. It's really important that they give me good trigger feel. Talking about Fieldcraft earlier on as well, I think shooters often think about wearing a peaked cap and a head net and hiding the pale skin of your face. I think when we move our hands around, it's like a white flag sometimes, particularly when we're out doing photos or video, and if you don't have gloves on, you suddenly see what your hands look like in the greens and browns of the natural environment. They really stand out. So I like to have shooting gloves. I also get Raynaud's, which means I've got like terrible circulation in my fingers, and in cold weather my hands go ridiculously numb. It gets to the point sometimes I have to go home because I can't feel the trigger. And it doesn't hurt at the time, but when the feeling comes back, it's absolute agony. So it helped with that too. So yeah, for me, £50, I'd buy a decent pair of gloves that are made for shooting.
Go on, Tom. What would you spend your money on, mate?
I think you need a good sling swivel these days. I think with rifles, if you're going out in the field and you're doing a bit of walking, and sometimes you end up doing more walking what you think, you want to be comfortable whilst you carry your rifle around. You don't want to be taking it in and out of a gun slip all the time, especially if it's a nice dry day or something like that. You want something, because you never know when you might see a rabbit or something just appear out of nowhere. Like, say, if you go for the ambush and everything, you want to, have it in, get it in an instant, really. And some of these ones have got such good quick releases on them these days and everything. I mean, we're talking about things like anything could cost more than £50, but you can still get a half decent one at that money. It's just this comfort, really, because you are going to be out for the day and you want to make sure that you're not tiring yourself out by carrying your gun the wrong way. Put it that way, really. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, I think most of my guns have got slings on now just because I'm kind of fat and lazy, but they are worth their weight in gold, literally. I think for me, it would be either a decent gun bag, because my guns tend to get sort of put in a bag and thrown in the back of the truck, and I've gotten into the habit of buying decent, well-padded gun bags now because I've learnt my lesson many a time. And also bipods. You can spend an awful lot more than 50 quid on a bipod, but as we were saying earlier, nothing beats getting down prone with a rifle on a bipod, especially when you're ambushing rabbits. It's just the most stable platform to shoot from. So I think that's what I would spend my money on if I had 50 quid knocking about.
Good call. Tom, before we let you go, the usual cruel question that we inflict on all of our guests. Your desert island airgun. So you're stranded on a desert island for the rest of your life. You're allowed one airgun. I should be really cruel and say it's not allowed to be a Weihrauch, but I haven't got the heart. What is your desert island airgun going to be?
Well, surprise, it is going to have to be a Weihrauch. I don't think it'd go down very, very well if I said it was going to be a TX or something like that. But it was funny. I was having this conversation with at work, and we've had this talk so many times beforehand. And I said it'd be a 95, and people said, "Why wouldn't you pick a 100? It's like it's the flagship rifle." And I said, after a few years being stranded, you get bored of it because it's just pellet on pellet accuracy. You need a bit of a challenge, something like that. The number of people who I speak to say, "I've had my 100 or 110 for 5-10 years, and I love it, but it's just so accurate. They need a challenge again." And I'm thinking, well, if I'm stranded with only one rifle, I don't want to make sure I'm bored of it after a few years. So I'd go for a 95. Like I say, I prefer brake barrels myself personally to underlevers, and I just think it's just a great all-around rifle if I'm going to be pinking away, or if I'm going to have to hunting rabbit for my tea every night.
Good shout.
I think that sounds like a really fair choice. Yeah, good call. Well, look, we will wrap it up there. Thank you ever so much, Tom. Thank you, Rich. I also want to thank Crackshot, the podcast sponsors. They're based in Newton Abbot, but if you can't get there, their website is crackshot.uk. Also, I should remind everybody to pick up a copy of Airgun World magazine. That's the latest issue. They went very subtle with fluorescent green there. So, yeah, an easy one to spot in the newsagents. Better still, take out a subscription, get it delivered to your door. You can subscribe at airgunshooting.co.uk. Subscription includes shooting insurance, and we do have an offer for podcast listeners. While you're there, if you also sign up for the free Airgun World newsletter, that will keep you bang up to date with everything that we're up to. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Terry and Dave will be back with another podcast in 2 weeks' time, and Rich and I will be back 2 weeks after that. Thank you.